Hi, I'm Dr. Malcolm Hudson, Associate Professor in Environmental Sciences at the University of Southampton. I'm going to talk to you about the Sustainable Environmental Management Pathway. This sits in the centre of what we do, and the choices of modules that you take can lean towards the other pathways. So if you, for example, if you're interested in biodiversity, you can do some biodiversity modules alongside the environmental management pathway modules as well. It's very much at the centre of what we do, and it's about the application of the science that you'll learn into the real world. I suppose that makes it quite strong for employability. So you'll learn, for example, about environmental law and how we regulate our natural environment and human activities to make sure that our activities for today and for the future are as sustainable as possible. You'll learn tools for actually managing the environment. So things like geographic information systems, where we can gather data on various scales to help us make the best decisions for management of the environment. And I run a module on environmental impact assessment, where we look at the impacts that major developments can have on the environment and how we manage and regulate that to make sure that our activities are sustainable. In that module, our students do an exercise where they work as environmental consultants. We look at a development scenario about developing a large wind farm on the coast of Hampshire on the edge of the New Forest, and the students have to scrutinise all of the possible impacts that it might have on the environment. So looking at the effects on people, on wildlife and nature reserves, on the landscape, on heritage, on groundwater, on transport, on noise, every aspect of the environment that you can think of. And they write that up as a consultancy report in the same way as a working environmental consultant would do. And it's very useful for employability because many of our students go into that field of work after they graduate. I also supervise projects in that area on the Sustainable Environmental Management Pathway. So, for example, I have a student just starting a project at the moment who's going to be looking at new ideas about net gain in biodiversity from developments. So if you propose a major development, you have to put in proposals with that to make sure that we end up with more and better biodiversity after the project has been completed than was there before. It's a new idea. I'm expecting he's going to come up with something that will be very useful in application in the world outside. And two students who are just finishing their degrees now did projects with me on monitoring microplastics. So trying to work out what the best methods are for finding out how much microplastic is in, say, coastal waters or rivers, so we can use those to better manage that pollutant as we learn more about it in future years.
Hello, my name is Jake Snadden and I'm a lecturer in ecology and environmental science at the University of Southampton. I'm going to introduce you to a biodiversity and conservation pathway on our environmental science BSc and 4-year master's course. This is one of the 4 pathways within the environmental science degree programme, and it is tailored towards students who are interested in more the biological or ecological side of environmental science. I'm sure you're all aware that we're experiencing unprecedented rates in biodiversity loss. This is linked to drivers such as changes in land use, unsustainable use of natural resources and climate change. The health of ecosystems on which we and other species depend is deteriorating more rapidly than ever. Within the biodiversity and conservation pathway, you'll be able to take pathway-specific modules in biology, ecology and conservation, where you can learn about topics such as population and community ecology and how species interact with each other, biogeography and the origin and distribution of species, and the current efforts to conserve and manage global biodiversity, and of course the consequences of losing this biodiversity. This is the science that underpins nature-based solutions to issues such as climate change and food security. You will also take core environmental science modules in topics such as sustainability, pollution, environmental law, and skills such as GIS or how to carry out an environmental impact assessment. While we hear a lot about the doom and gloom stories, within biodiversity and conservation there is much to be optimistic about, such as increases in tree cover in the Northern Hemisphere, successful species reintroductions, or recent advances in practices such as rewilding. In the final year, students on this pathway have carried out projects, as you would imagine, on a whole variety of topics. Recent projects include looking at the impact of woodland fragmentation on species, on the thermal tolerance of species within urban environments, or the impact of urban noise on species. Students have also gone further afield with projects on whale sharks in Mexico, pollinators in oil palm plantations in Malaysia, or the impact of land use change on bat communities in Belize. The subjects and skills you'll learn within this pathway equip you for a career in the field. In terms of the different employment opportunities, these are very varied and depend on your specific interests. But what we do see is that students often develop links with organisations and companies while on the degree programme, and these links often result in initial employment opportunities after graduation. Do feel free to get in touch with us if you would like any more information on the pathways or have any questions about the environmental science degrees. Thank you very much.
Hello, my name's Kate Parks, and I'm going to talk to you now about the environmental change pathway, which is one of the 4 pathways available to you on the BSc and the MMSci programmes. So why have I chosen this particularly garish striped slide as my first slide? Well, the reason what this slide is showing you is a representation of temperature anomalies from 1850 until the current day. So on the left-hand side, where it's predominantly blue, we're seeing temperatures that are colder than the average conditions. And on the right-hand side, where we are now, we're seeing temperatures that are much warmer than what we would expect. So environmental change, people often think of as being just about climate change. And climate change is obviously a really important facet of this pathway. So again, we've got the same data just shown in a slightly different way here, showing how global temperatures have been increasing in the last 170 years or so. What's also important is land cover change. So when we're talking about environmental change on this pathway, we're not just looking at climate change, although that is an important part of what you study. You're also going to look at other factors that contribute to this more holistic view of environmental change. So land cover change, for example, here, what we're looking at in the top map is is how much natural vegetation cover there is in 1000 years BC. So what we're looking at is the greener the colour, the more natural vegetation there is. So you'll notice that the Sahara is coloured in green. That doesn't mean it had trees, that means it's as it would have been expected. What the bottom picture shows, and I want to point out the dates here, so we're now looking at 1850, and you can see that we've lost already massive amounts of natural vegetation, and that has this feedback effect with climate change. So if you've had deforestation, then the effects of climate change are felt more severely, and also the lack of forests drives climate change. Underlying both of these problems is changes to human population. So what we're seeing here is the population from about 1750 projected through to 2100. And you can see that since 1850, when those the map of natural vegetation was prepared, you can see that we've had a massive population increase. And so that's going to make both of those problems even more impactful. So to sum up, the environmental change pathway looks at how people and the environment interact and the causes and effects of those drivers of change. So how do people cause climate change? How are they affected by climate change? How can we kind of reduce the impact and reduce the effects of climate and land cover change? The sort of modules that you're likely to cover include, you obviously will do the core modules, which are taught by the environmental science staff, and then the more pathway specific modules, you'll look at some demography. There are specialist geography modules you can choose from if you want to look more at a physical geography side of things, so glaciation, desert landscapes, looking at the role of those in regulating climate. And then there are also some more management focused modules looking at impacts of climate change. In terms of dissertation projects, environmental change students have looked at, so I recently had a project student looking at deforestation in Kenya and mapping out the driving forces that seem to have been associated with the deforestation rates in different counties within Kenya, which was a really interesting project because it found that rather than being associated with an increase in agriculture, as is normally assumed, it was actually associated with an increase in urbanisation. And in terms of careers that people go on to following the environmental change pathway, it's really varied. It's hard to kind of pick out a few examples. So people have gone on to work at local authorities as kind of as part of their climate change and teams. They've gone on to be environmental consultants. They've gone on to work for non-governmental organisations. There's a real wealth of career opportunities out there. I hope that's helped you understand a bit more about the environmental change pathway. Thank you for listening.
Hello, my name's Pete. I'm going to tell you a little bit about our aquatic ecosystems and resources pathway. So as you know, our degree programmes allow you to specialise in different areas, and we call these pathways at Southampton. So the aquatic ecosystems and resources pathway is really all about water. So it can be a focus on lakes, ponds, rivers, it might be seas, estuaries. And we all know that these are absolutely critical for life on Earth, and that also they're threats from various different activities and actions that humans take. Now, the way that we try and deal with that problems in aquatic environments is actually very complex because of the nature and extent of these systems. So what we really need here is interdisciplinary science. So this is where our aquatic ecosystems and resources pathway focuses on. So the pathway cuts across quite a lot of different disciplines. So within the university, we have modules from environmental science, ocean and earth science, geography and biology. So it's quite a mixture of different subject areas feed into this pathway. Now, the way that this works is the same as other pathways. So basically, we have a menu of modules. So you can choose from a list of modules that are related to water and important for this pathway. So within this, you can focus on freshwater. It might be marine. You could blend the two. And together with aspects of chemistry, physics, and biology, you build a portfolio of different skills, knowledge, and understanding. Now, particularly at Southampton, water is a strong area. We've got a lot of research and teaching that takes place, particularly our Oceanography Centre. We have a lot of strength here with experts on marine systems. And so there's a lot of marine science modules that are available to environmental science course, as well as the other modules from biology and geography and environmental science. There's a lot of opportunities as well for specialising, particularly through your final year project. There's a lot of scope here, so we work a lot on local rivers, ponds, sometimes estuaries, rocky shore communities, and all of these can focus on water quality, ecology, conservation, restoration of systems, management, and a lot more of different aspects according to the focus that individual students want to take. There's also a lot of career opportunities in this area. So within consulting, so there's a big need for freshwater and marine specialists. Regulators as well, quite a few of our graduates work for the Environment Agency in Natural England. The Wildlife Trusts have also got a lot of interest in these areas. And there's a lot of charities as well. So river management organisations are actually quite numerous, and a lot of this work is undertaken with the charitable sector. So even if water isn't in your focus at the moment, it might be in due course. So keep in mind that the way the environmental science courses work here is that the specialisation doesn't really begin in full measure until the start of the second year. So if you're not sure if water or any other aspect of environmental science is really where you want to focus yet, don't worry yet. There is plenty of time to make up your mind and decide where you place your efforts in due course.
Our 3-year Bachelor of Science Environmental Management of the Business programme is focused on students who are passionately interested in the environment, sustainability and people, but are also interested in how the world of business works and are looking to develop a career that might be more business focused. The essence of the degree is really focused on ensuring that you can have the opportunity to develop the critical skills of an environmental scientist that allow you to have a long and fruitful career in that area and will give you the credibility in the workplace, but also allow you to develop those softer professional management and business skills. So the course is based on 3/4 environmental science and 1/4 business modules. Now, the first year is spent exactly the same as the rest of the environmental science cohort. So you'll be part of the Centre for Environmental Science community, and you'll be sharing modules with all the other students on all our programmes. The only difference there is that you'll take one business module, but other than that, you'll be developing those critical base skills that you need to be a competent environmental scientist. In later years, it's more about the balance between environmental science and business. So, for example, in year 2, whilst you'll take those core practical skilled focused environmental science modules, such as environmental impact assessment, geographical information systems, and sustainability, you will also take 2 modules that are optional choices from the business school. They could be in innovation on the environment, it could be entrepreneurship, social enterprise, and you'll also take a core module in the business school as well. And that will then be supplemented by module choices that you make from the environmental science portfolio that meet your interests. So, for example, that could be in energy and the environment. It could be in global climate change. Year 3 is where the program gets very, very different indeed. So half of your final year is spent working on your research project in partnership with an organization on placement. Now, that placement might be spending some time in the company and remote working. It could be entirely remote working. It could be all time in the company. But the important thing to recognize here is that this is built around your learning requirements, built around your interests and what type of career you wish to pursue. So you can actually develop the professional experience that many people might not be able to take advantage of as part of your 3-year program, rather than having to take a year out in industry. So examples that we've had in recent years, we've had students going to work on carbon footprinting within Marwell Zoo. We've had students doing research on electric bikes for the local council, working on ecosystem services in one of the world's biggest environmental consultancy firms. We've also had students go to work in local energy companies. There's a great mix of opportunities, even going as far as working on sustainability issues in the Aegeus Bowl, which is Hampshire County Cricket. So the important thing to recognise here is that you've got half of your final year built specifically around you, and I work closely in partnership with you to find the right companies for you. The rest of the final year is then built on the development of those fine, high-level professional skills and knowledge sets. So you'll take 1 or 2 modules in the business school, but you'll also take the core modules on the sustainability professional, which is where we get alumni to come in and talk about the work that they're doing and give you real-world challenges that they've worked on. And you get those networking opportunities, and also modules such as environmental law and management, where you look at understanding and interpreting environmental science issues and how they apply in the real world and how we can enforce that to make positive change. So this is a unique degree. It's something which is designed around you and is designed to help you go out and make the world a better place.